For him to stop his frequent trips home to his home state of Delaware. Look, stay in the White House. Go, work on the problems. But maybe he's got like a secret cave in his house and we don't know about it.
Cave in his house.
Representative McHenry today ordered me to vacate my Capitol office. McHenry is a sad little man stuck in the closet when everyone knows what he does in the Capitol basement with Lindsey Graham. You can't tell me what to do. I will destroy you. Mark my words, queer boy.
Full Measure has learned the FDA is planning a public meeting as it grapples with a little-known but serious risk from a common medical procedure, MRIs. The danger comes from an injected chemical agent, a heavy metal called gadolinium, used to enhance the images. Doctors used to think it was quickly expelled from the body. It turns out that's not always the case, and it makes a small percentage of people very sick, as it did the wife of American icon Chuck Norris.
I just heard that still small voice deep inside of me that said, Gina, your body is dying. And I walked out of the bathroom and he just took one look at me and he knew I'm about to lose my wife.
You took one look at her. What did you see?
Well, I saw death in her eyes. I saw her dying. And I said, I've got to do something.
For Chuck Norris and his wife, the nightmare began when Gina had 3 MRIs in 1 week to evaluate her rheumatoid arthritis. The MRIs triggered a cascade of mysterious health issues that nearly killed her.
I was in the emergency room for like 5 or 6 nights in a row, and the symptoms had continued to get worse and worse. And by the 4th, 5th, 6th night, the burning just kept traveling, and I would go in and they'd say, well, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel good. And I'm burning. That's all I can tell you is I'm burning all over. I feel like I have acid everywhere in my tissues. I'm on fire.
Doctors tested her for everything from cancer to ALS, Parkinson's, and multiple sclerosis, but were mystified. Gina began a desperate search and turned up published literature and patient accounts pointing to one thing: poisoning from a substance injected into her before the MRI. It contains a toxic heavy metal called gadolinium.
When we got to the hospital in Houston this last time, and I'm so bad, and I said, listen, I am sober enough in my thinking right now because I had such brain issues going on. I said, I'm only going to be able to tell you this one time, and I need you to listen to me very closely. I have been poisoned with gadolinium, or by gadolinium, and we don't have much time to figure out how to get this out of my body or I'm going to die. And then my arm is completely drawn up like this. I mean, I laid in a bed in that clinic for 5 months on IVs every day.
America's national debt spiraling out of control. You're not going to believe these numbers. It's grown by $275 billion in a single day. That's according to the country's Treasury Department. Give you a bit of context here. That figure exceeds the total Russian debt and is nearly as big as Russia's yearly spending budget. Well, I've been discussing this here in the studio with RT contributor Chris M. Stories like this, when somebody says to me, Rory, how big is the universe? I don't know. How big is U.S. debt? I can't get my head around this either. The numbers we're talking, they're nearly inconceivable.
You're absolutely right, Rory. They're extortionate. They're actually unfathomable, using a big word there. If we look at the actual figures, the U.S. debt is over $33 trillion now. I mean, these are numbers that you just could never imagine how a country could ever get to a point where essentially, in my opinion, money is worthless, right? And, as we had just at the beginning of that clip there, we looked at comparing this to other countries. So comparing it to Russia, if we look, the US debt, $33 trillion, 275 billion in one day being added to that balance sheet. And compare that again to the Russian budget, right? This is the entire annual budget of the Russian Federation is $290 billion for this 1 year. Even worse, Rory, if we take, let's say, a country which is accelerating at such a rapid speed, China, right? We're always talking about China now and the growth of China. The US debt, right? The pace of debt per month is $1 trillion if we look at it. We've looked at this daily.
Say that again, Chris. What did you just say? Sorry, just one more time, please.
OK, so the debt pace of the entire US economy per month now is $1 trillion.
You can't be, really?
Yeah, right. The entire budget for the entire Chinese economy, the entire country, i.e. the money that China actually spends on its economy every year is $4 trillion. So the US, I mean, how do they keep up? The question is, Rory, really, how is the US going to keep up in this ever-changing, multipolar world where they just think that printing money is the way to get out of it?
There's a huge political scandal unfolding across Florida that's almost too outrageous to believe, even for Florida.
One of the most powerful power companies in the country granted candidates in Senate races across Florida.
Political committees with dark, untraceable money.
Spying on a local journalist.
Latest utility bill from Florida Power and Light is through the roof.
This scandal involves millions of dollars in corporate money, billions of dollars in corporate revenue and profit, and reaches all the way up to Governor Ron DeSantis, roping in the vast majority of the state government along with him. Florida Power and Light, or FPL, is the biggest power company in the state, serving approximately 12 million people. FPL is also one of the biggest political spenders in the state, and that is how FPL has been able to gouge working-class Floridians over $1.5 billion in rate increases over the next couple of years.
Get ready to pay more for your power.
Florida Power and Light customers across Northwest Florida say they're worried about their bills.
Like right now, my bill is $569 for this month.
Wow.
That's not a late payment, that's an actual payment.
And FPL can't blame these high bills on inflation because the company also leads the nation in shareholder and executive profit. Many of Florida Power and Light's political contributions are shuffled through shady LLCs and big business PACs. But even just from the public numbers, we know that FPL has spent over $18 million on political campaigns in Florida since the 2018 election cycle. And it's probably a lot more than that. 2018 was a blue wave across the nation, but here in Florida, thanks to millions of dollars from FPL, Republicans were able to secure a stronghold on the state, putting Governor Ron DeSantis in the governor's mansion and securing a supermajority in the state legislature. FPL also spends millions on lobbying to make sure that that company gets more than its money's worth from DeSantis and the legislature.
Here's the crazy thing. Florida Power and Light isn't getting what it wants just by making millions of dollars in campaign contributions and leveraging its political connections. Investigative journalists across Florida have uncovered a web of deceptive election schemes with consultants for Florida Power and Light at the center of it all. For instance, back in 2019, FPL's CEO, a guy by the name of Eric Szilagyi, was furious with a Democratic state senator from Miami named Jose Javier Rodriguez. He was an environmentalist.
You know, I've been working on consumer issues, clean energy issues about FP&L my entire time in the legislature.
After Rodriguez filed yet another solar power bill that Szilagyi didn't like, Szilagyi personally emailed his lobbyists and told them to make Rodriguez's life a living hell. And that's exactly what FPL's paid consultants did. They provided the money for what's become known in Florida as the ghost candidate scandal.
Growing list of investigations into ghost candidates. A scheme to run sham candidates in 3 Senate races.
These FPL consultants and other Republican operatives ran hundreds of thousands of dollars through dark money organizations to advertise these random people who had been put on the ballot as spoiler candidates, allowing the Republicans to swoop in and win all 3 races. They did this to Jose Javier Rodriguez with a guy named Alex Rodriguez.
Looking for Alexis Rodriguez.
Alex is in here.
Hours after this visit, we learned that was Alex Rodriguez.
Rodriguez got 3% of the votes, 6,300 plus voters.
Jose Javier Rodriguez lost his re-election by 32 votes. Some of these same consultants were involved in yet another spoiler candidate scheme that helped Republicans win a 4th seat in 2018. That's 4 Senate seats in 4 years, and Republicans now control a 4-seat majority in the Florida Senate.
FPL is supposed to be governed by independent experts at the Florida Public Service Commission. But guess who appoints those commissioners? Yep, Governor Ron DeSantis. So Ron DeSantis, who did not forget how the Republicans came into power, was more than happy to appoint friends of FPL to that commission. In 2021, the commission gave FPL permission to increase monthly bills by over $1.5 billion over the next couple years. Not only that, but FPL is also allowed to charge customers more if the price of energy continues to go up. And that's exactly what's happening right now. DeSantis also signed a law that allows FPL to charge customers even more for the cost of stormproofing the infrastructure. Now, the sponsors and supporters of these pieces of legislation, they're all at the top of FPL's political contribution list. Shouldn't there be somebody who oversees all of this, somebody who can wave a red flag when it starts to get out of control? Yep, that person is supposed to be the Office of Public Counsel. Unfortunately, Governor Ron DeSantis and the state legislature, after taking millions of dollars from FPL, passed new legislation that forced out what had been a good public counsel and replaced it with a former utility lobbyist. Yep, a former utility lobbyist is the one who is in charge of holding FPL accountable.
And FPL is continuing to spend millions of dollars on this year's elections in Florida, from the race for governor to legislative seats around the state. And these elections will have enormous consequences for Florida's energy and climate future.
As Florida Power and Light cross the line, some are saying the public really doesn't know who they're doing business with.
Hello, everybody. It's Christian Wagley here again with Healthy Golf with some breaking news of interest to all of us that have been following the rate case and the huge rate increase for us FPL ratepayers here in Northwest Florida that hit back in January of 2022. So the Florida Supreme Court ruled today in a case challenging the rate increase that was approved by the Florida Public Service Commission back in 2021. And joining me to explain it all is one of the attorneys who challenged the case before the Florida Supreme Court, and that's Jordan Lubkeman, who's a senior associate attorney with Earth Justice, and he's based in Tallahassee. Jordan, thank you for coming on with us.
Thanks for having us, Christian.
You bet. So you challenged, along with others, the 2021 rate case by FPL on behalf of Floridians Against Increased Rates and a coalition of three other organizations. That's Florida Rising, the Environmental Confederation of Southwest Florida, and the League of United Latin American Citizens of Florida. You argued that the settlement was not in the public interest and that some parts of it violated state law. So this is incredible today that this case that you argued before the Supreme Court last February, I believe, and the court released their decision earlier today. What exactly did the court rule?
Yeah, so I think the last time that we got together and spoke, we mentioned there's a couple ways that it could go. The court could either reach the merits, in which we argued that the multiple parts of this settlement exceeded the commission's statutory authority, and that the settlement itself as a whole was not in the public interest. The court stopped short of that today, and instead they focused on the sufficiency of the order itself. So what this case was doing was actually, when we talk about challenging the settlement agreement, what we were challenging is the Florida Public Service Commission's approval of the settlement agreement. So that's the actual order that is being challenged. And the Public Service Commission, in approving a settlement, can't just thumbs up or thumbs down. It has to explain why the settlement, taken as a whole, is in the public interest. And that means defining the public interest. That means looking at all of the major elements of that settlement agreement and making factual findings as to those elements, and then coming up with some kind of global determination about whether this public interest standard has been met. And we argued from the outset that they failed to do so. It's our argument on the merits that they could not do so. On this record, you just can't show that this largest increase of rates in U.S. history was good for the public interest, because frankly, it wasn't. But what the court did today is it said, you have not, and this is a direct quote, you haven't given us anything to work with. That's what the majority opinion today said, is that we, the Supreme Court of Florida, cannot meaningfully review what the commission did, because the commission did not show its work. The commission did not show us what findings it was purporting to make. And so we can't make a determination about whether those findings are actually supported by the evidence or not.